welcome everyone to our weekly interview, our weekly installment of some incredible inspiration from different women from around the world. Honestly, we've had from Israel and from Canada and from I don't even know where. Every week we have a different guest, and this week's guest is a personal favorite of mine. She's my personal cheerleader sometimes. I just have no words to describe what I feel about Renee Ferrara, who's my boss, the president of Congregation Ahavat Achim, and really an inspiration for all Jewish women. And I feel really excited about this topic in particular, which is that we titled it "Keeping the Traditions Alive," because I feel like Renee, she lives that. That's her life. You know, when I first was introduced to Renee a couple of years ago, I didn't really know who this woman was. It took a while to really, really understand that this woman's life is all about keeping the traditions alive. I remember telling my husband, the rabbi of Congregation Ahavat Achim, it feels like the people that are involved in this congregation would rather die than see it die. I don't know, maybe I was going a little too far. You guys, I don't know, like Mark and Ron, you guys are like, nah. but there's something so strong at the base of our congregation that it's almost hard to describe. There's this passion there for survival. Like you're willing to go to any length to see our Sephardic congregation not only survive, but thrive. So the topic is, how do we keep the traditions alive? And it's not an easy topic. It's not an easy conversation. And in talking to Renee this week and having a heart-to-heart about this topic, there were tears and there were emotions. And it's not just like this pretty picture of like, we're going strong. We actually have a lot of fears for the future of Sephardic Jewry. What is it going to look like in another decade or two? What's the next generation going to take with them? How are we passing this on? And just to kind of give a little bit of background, when I came into Ahavat Achim as an employee exactly a year ago, just over a year ago, my first experience was going with Renee to Seattle for a Sephardic conference. It was called the Urencia, right? Is that what it was called? I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It was a Spanish conference that actually the word Urencia means heritage. And it was all about Sephardic heritage and how we're going to keep going. And it was a little bit heartbreaking because at some point there was no way to deny that the next generation is not going as strong as the previous generation. There was one point, Renee, I don't know if I told you this or not, but at one point we went to the Sephardic cemetery in Seattle. As part of the program, we were touring all around. And at that point, I went into a corner in the little prayer center, they had a little synagogue there, I guess. And I took out a prayer book and I cried because it was after 3 days of being at this conference. And I'm such a positive person, but it was impossible to not see that it wasn't like it's all peaches and cream for the future. We're going to need to put down some roots. We're going to need to do something really, really powerful in order to pass our fabulous traditions on to the next generation. So that's why I feel really passionate about this conversation. And I'm excited to dig deep with you, Renee. And I want you to feel comfortable to really just open your heart and share, because I mean, there's so much that is inside of you that I feel needs to really get into our minds and into our hearts. So time will not be on our side because we're not going to have so much time, but we'll do our best. So welcome, Renee. I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to everybody that's watching.
Hi, I'm Renee Ferrara, as you all know, and together with my cousin Ron Sidis, we are co-presidents of Ahavat Achim right now. And I was born and raised in Portland and raised in our Sephardic congregation. Both of my parents are Sephards. All four of my grandparents are from the island of Rhodes, and was just raised in a Sephardic family and Sephardic traditions, and I love our synagogue. This is the second time that I've been the president of the synagogue. I was the president, I think, in like about 85 or 90, sometime in that time period. I can't remember for sure. Renee,
you're the first female president.
Yes,
at our congregation. This is pretty awesome.
Not the first, the only.
Right.
So that's my introduction.
Yeah, well, Renee was telling me so much about her parents and her grandparents, and I see that the apple does not fall far from the tree, because Renee's parents were so devoted to this synagogue. I mean, you said your father was the secretary for 52 years?
Yes, my father was the secretary. My mother was the president of the Ladies Auxiliary for, who knows, forever almost.
Wow.
And then when the board of the synagogue finally decided to allow women to be members of the board, she was the first female member of the board of the congregation.
Wow. You guys are real trendsetters.
Grandfather, my Aunt Sylvia's father, was a founding member of the synagogue.
Wow, that's amazing. So incredible. So I'm going to start with the first question. And the question really, to you, Renee, and there's no right or wrong answer, but what does tradition even mean to you? Like when you think traditions, and I know like a lot of it has to do with the melodies and the foods, but like, how would you describe your take on tradition?
Well, we talked about that, and you mentioned the melodies and the foods. For me, Sephardic traditions, when I walk into the synagogue and I hear the melodies that we use when we pray, they're the same melodies I was raised with, and they're different from the melodies I hear when I go to Chabad or to Neve Sholem or Sheret Torah, any of the other synagogues. They're different. And the way we pray is different in the Sephardic synagogue. It's very, very participative. Everybody prays aloud the whole time. During some of the holidays, the Chazan at the front of, which is cantor in the Sephardic tradition, will stand up there and he'll point to different people to say different parts of the service, and everyone's prepared to do that. It's just a warm, welcoming prayer environment. And when I go and hear Kol Nidre, or the Nay Law service, or any of those that are done once a year, it's like I cry, because wow, it brings back all the melodies, bring back all the memories of growing up in that congregation. Wow. And traditions are also the holidays. And I remember we always had the holidays at my grandmother's house, and my grandmother and grandfather always had specific traditions that we followed. When my grandparents were no longer able to carry those holiday traditions on, my mother, being the oldest of 5 children, took them on for our extended family. So my aunts and uncles and cousins all joined us for the holidays at my mother's house, my parents' house. And then when they were gone and could no longer do it, we moved it to my house. So it's just been like generation after generation of following the traditions of the holidays. And then, of course, I'm blessed by having women in my family who have what we call bendichos manos, which are called their blessed hands. And they know how to make all of these wonderful Sephardic dishes, baking and entrees and side dishes and whatever. And they taught me how to do it.
Wow. I feel like it's not only the women now. I know Ron is in there in the kitchen, and Richard, and everyone is, it seems like it's the whole family gets in on these traditions at a certain point, right? It's not only for the women anymore.
No, it's not. When we cook for the holidays, both my male and female cousins come and help. So
wow.
Mostly it's Ron.
So wait, just stop here for a sec, because we're going to talk about the food soon, and I want to hear all the stories and the cousins and how it all transpired. But there were two things that you said to me when we spoke yesterday that I wrote down that really, really wow, those words were very powerful. The first thing was, you said that when you go into synagogue and you hear the melodies, you said it lights your fire. And you also said that it lifts your spirit. And if I would give a definition to what traditions are all about, I'd want those words connected to it. Because the only way for us to be able to pass traditions on to the next generation is if it's something that brings us joy and it lights a spark inside of us. If we're feeling excited about it, somehow we'll make sure that it carries on. So when I heard those words, Renee, you may or may not realize this, but you have lit my fire. I grew up, it's true. I've grown up as an Ashkenazi girl.
That's quite, you're pretty.
What'd you say?
I can't imagine lighting your fire any more than it's already lit.
I love you too. I'm an excited individual, but I must say, coming into the Sephardic world without knowing all the foods and the language and the prayers and the melodies, I kind of felt a little bit like an outsider, right? There was a lot of new. In fact, the night before my wedding to my 100% Sephardic husband, who's half Tunisian, half Moroccan, the night before my wedding, we had a Sephardic henna party. So just imagine, my family just got off the plane from Canada to Israel, and we're all 100% Ashkenazi. Like when I did my DNA testing, it was on, 23andMe, it was 100% Ashkenazic Jewish. Like you don't get more Ashkenazi than this, okay? And it was the night before the wedding, and all of a sudden I see myself in my henna party with my husband's grandmothers wrapping me in gold coins and materials. And I'm like, I'm sitting there, not knowing what, putting henna, slapping henna dye on my hands and, all the hoopla. And my best friend, who's also Ashkenazi, she came over to me. She whispered in my ear, Eve, are you sure you want to go through with this? It was different. So I must say that over the years, I've slowly become more and more comfortable to the point where right now I feel so privileged to be a part of this tradition, to be carrying these beautiful, traditions on that have gone all the way back to your heritage, and I'm going to pass it to my children. So I'm really excited to have that torch that you've given me, Renee, and it's really such an honor and a privilege. So let's get to the second question, because I have three questions, and then we're going to transition to the next part of our program tonight, which is really rolling up our sleeves and making some Sephardic bizcochos. So the second question is, how would you envision the Sephardic future? We could dream, right, Renee? We could only dream. Or maybe even, how would you like to envision our synagogue in 10 years from now? I love dreaming. If you dream it, it could come. So let's dream.
Being a practical person, if I'm going to dream something, I want to dream something that's actually doable. We have years of Sephardic families who, because we didn't have a rabbi for so many years, their children all went to Sunday school at some other synagogue. We didn't have one. And oftentimes they married Ashkenazi Jews and went to pray at other synagogues. And so we don't really have a groundswelling of young people coming up through our synagogue to carry forward our traditions that are Sephardic. And because we're Orthodox, the families who are Sephardic they're no longer Orthodox. A good many of them, some are, but most of them are not. So we really, so we have to look elsewhere for our future. And what I have been envisioning is through the wonderful ministry that we get from our fantastic Rabbi Levy and his wonderful wife, that they bring in people. You don't have to be Sephardic to be a member of our congregation. Anybody can be a member of our congregation. And my dream really is that they attract people to them who want to learn our melodies, who want to learn our culture, who feel the warmth and the love that we have in our congregation, because there really is a lot of that amongst our whole congregation. It's a very welcoming place. They feel that and they say, I want to be a part of that. And I want to learn the traditions that the Sephardic culture offers so that I can participate in this congregation fully. And that's my dream. That's where I'm hoping we're going for our future. Because to be honest with you, if we are unsuccessful in doing that, we really don't have a future. And it would be a shame.
Right. It's amazing to be part of a dream that's unfolding. And there have been many moments in the past year where I've seen growth of our congregation. And whether it was when it was on Yom Kippur for Ne'ilah, and there was standing room only practically. I mean, we filled that large space that we expanded. And to see that happening is kind of just, it's very sweet and it's encouraging, because I think we're all with you in that dream for vibrancy and continuity. So my third question to you is, if you had a message for Sephardic Jews, or really any Jews out there, to stay connected to their roots, what would that be?
Oh my. Just find a home that you can grow in. And I don't mean a home like where you live, but
a
community where you can connect and meet the people and interact with them and learn from them and just grow that way. That's the only way I know to do that. I mean, if for me personally, I have the most wonderful family in the world, and I can connect through my family anytime I want. It's they're there, and I'm not talking about brothers and sisters because I'm an only child. I'm talking about cousins and aunts, I can connect with them and we have a shared experience. But if you don't have that shared experience, then you need to find it someplace. And the only place I can think of is through a community resource like our synagogue.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. And if I could add to just a few words and a message that I would give to Jews out there, all over the diaspora, all over the world, in staying strong. It's envisioning ourselves as a Jewish people as being part of this miraculous chain that has gone back thousands of years. And I look at every link as every generation and the strength and the courage that it must have taken for every generation, for every person to choose in again and again and again. And the fact that we could still be alive and our doors open is nothing less than a miracle. But here's the thing. We're only as strong as our weakest link in that chain, right? We need to strengthen ourselves. We need to see the chain as being part of this big picture. And we can't lose sight of the big picture. It's gone back so many thousands of years. And God willing, we have a ways to go to come to our completion, to come to a better place for the whole Jewish world. So seeing yourself as part of that, it really strengthens you because we all need to do our part. And that's how I feel very strongly about keeping not only just alive, but really, really staying strong. It's so important. So now, Renee, I want to hear some of the stories. And there are so many great stories. I want to hear a little bit about your grandparents and some of the fights and the over the food. And it's all about the food, I feel like. If you just mention like borecas or biscachos, right, Ron? You could unmute yourself over here, Ron. He's dying to share. Go, unmute, both of you. Just jump on in.
So
Go ahead, Renee.
So Eve asked me when we talked yesterday what my favorite food was, and I told her that they were boyus di spinaca, and which are a puff pastry with spinach and cheese in it, and we eat them for Hanukkah and for Rosh Hashanah. For Hanukkah for the oil and Rosh Hashanah for the spinach, but in any event, this is a pastry that takes 2 days to make. And my mother and Ron's mother, my aunt, used to make them for our family for the holidays. And and me and Ron and our cousins, all of our extended family would get together for the holidays. And they'd serve these boyus and we'd start fighting over it. We'd start counting how many each person had and telling them, no, you can't have another one because I haven't had as many as you. And we'd get into fights at the dinner table over it. And so this one year, my mother said to us, enough already. You guys eat these things like they're candy and you don't realize how difficult they are to make. Next year, you're going to make them. And I'm sure she thought we would say, oh, no, we appreciate you. We love you. There's the boy right there. Ron's got one.
Wait. Ron, you have to talk. Unmute yourself so everyone can see you. You have to talk and then your picture will get shown.
No, she's doing just fine. She's going to tell you I'm the doughboy.
Show us what you got.
So instead we said, okay, good. We want to learn. You come and teach us. And so that first year, my mother came to my house with all of my cousins, male and female, that were in Portland at the time. And she taught us how to make boyus di spinaca. And she taught us the old-fashioned way. You don't use a rolling pin to roll things out. You use your hands to open them up. And you don't use a dough hook on a KitchenAid. You knead with your hands. So we improved the recipe. And then we kicked her out of the house. And
literally
said, thank you very much. We'll do it from now on. And that was probably 30 years ago. And twice a year, we still get together and make boyus di spinaca, me and my cousins. And it's just a wonderful, it's not only just the food that makes it so special, but it's cooking together with my family and following these traditions. And this one year, I don't remember exactly how, I guess a woman who wrote for the Oregonian Food Day contacted me because she wanted
her name is Dina Pritchett.
Okay. She wanted to know what Sephardic potato latkes were, what the Sephards used for instead of potato latkes. So I told her about this recipe and about some of the stories and that we get together with my cousins. And she came when we made boyus. And she took pictures and she did an audio recording of us, and it played on OPB National Public Radio Weekend Edition on a Saturday in December, just before Hanukkah. It was many years ago, but Eve has the link if anybody wants to read the story, see the recipe, and hear the interview. But it was pretty special.
You know what? Can I tell you one of my favorite things that I heard? It was, Ron, you were being interviewed and you shared that when your mother was very ill and it was towards the end of her life and she really stopped talking, and you would still pick her up and bring her over when you were making these, what's it called again? The boyos. And that she wouldn't even talk, but she just sat there and her hands were busy working. Like that for me, I mean, it really touched something very deep, you know, losing my grandmothers in the last year and knowing that when they get so ill, when my grandmother had Alzheimer's and she was just sitting there, it was a painful experience, but seeing her, you know, even without using her voice, her words, she was joyously doing what she's been doing for her whole life. I mean, how was that for you, Ron? That must have been such a special memory.
That was amazing. And she sat at the table and she would put the cheese on the boys and make sure they were all right before they went in the oven. And it was wonderful to have her here to do that, knowing what she was doing.
She could probably just do it in her sleep, right? Like she did that her whole life. Such an amazing thing. Beautiful.
I think Renee should talk to you about the eggshells.
I heard there was a little fight over an eggshell. Tell us.
What we go through.
My mother has an eggshell phobia. And when Ron cracks eggs, and let me say, and she passed it on to me. So I now have this eggshell phobia also. But when Ron cracks eggs, he does it one-handed. You know, he cracks it on the eggs and opens it. And all I can do is see in my mind's eye, maybe not really, but in my mind's eye, the eggshells falling into the thing. So my mother saw him do that while we were cooking, and she kind of freaked out. So we had to kick her out of the house again. I mean, I say that lovingly. You know, this is, And now when we make the boyus, I make Ron let me crack the eggs before we do anything with it.
It's hysterical. Well, Renee, I know how much your family means to you, and being that your parents are no longer here and your grandparents are no longer here. What's it like for you when you're in your kitchen with, let's say, your cousins or maybe some of your aunts, and you're doing this? I mean, do you feel a strong presence?
You know, Eve, it's amazing. You see my Aunt Sylvia is here with us. When the holidays come now, and she's in Los Angeles, and it's time to cook for the holidays, I'm the one she calls when she has a question about how to do something, because she knows my mother taught me. And my mother was the best cook in the world. And so she calls, we talk about the recipe, and then we talk about my mother. It's like it helps keep them alive in our mind. And that's true when we have the holidays. I sit here and I think about my parents. You know, for Passover now, Ron leads our Seder. It used to be my father. And I sit here and think about how proud my father would be to see his nephew leading our Passover Seder for us. And, you know, when we're cooking for any of the holidays, it's the same thing. I channel my mother when I'm cooking Sephardic food.
Wow, that's so
and
special.
It keeps me alive.
Oh. You know, there's a Jewish idea that when there's a holiday or a joyous occasion, there are, I think it says that, I think there's 3 generations, like the past generations are with us. You know, they're no longer physically with us, but their souls are hovering, and they're close to us and they're connected with us. So I guess when you're in your kitchen doing your thing and preparing for your holidays, it must be like a reunion of some sort of the past generations coming and saying, Renee, is that an eggshell? Okay. So that's really special. You know, my grandmother, who just passed away a few months ago, my Babi Gusa, she would always call me before the holidays and ask me, you know, Ivale, did you make your hamantashen? are you ready for Passover? Are you making gefilte fish? You know, she would ask me, like, it was important to her, just like your aunt calls you. Like it's so important to just know that you're passing this on, that it will stay alive after we're no longer here. Mm-hmm. So it's just very, very powerful. So you told us about those flaky boyos, the spinach cheese, and tell us a little bit about some of the other foods, just in a nutshell. What are your favorite other Sephardic foods? And then we're going to take it into the bizcochos.
Okay. I guess my other favorite, what we call comida, which is main course entree, is something that you love, Eve, which is eggplant yaproks, which are slices of eggplant that are filled with a hamburger mixture, rolled and then baked with a little bit of tomato sauce. And that's one of my very favorite things to make. But there's a lot of steps. You know, Sephardic food is not easy to make. I remember I was making these eggplants one time at Hillsdale, and Mira from next door Mira Spivak was over there, and she came in and she watched what I was doing, and she said, "My God, that's a lot of work." And I said, "Yeah, it's a lot of work." But you know, it tastes, you can tell from the taste that it's worth it.
It's worth it. So, it's a labor of love, right? I feel like Sephardic food is really a labor of love. The cooking, it's so hands-on.
Renee?
Yes.
Remember Pam put out that cookbook of all the family's recipes?
Yes. Ron's wife put together a wonderful cookbook of our recipes. But wow. And Auntie Sylvia was sitting there pointing at me when you said labor of love, because she wanted to remind me that this love that we have came from her mother, our grandmother, who taught her children this love of family. And as a result, you know, there were 4 girls in that family, and all 4 of them raised their children to be connected. All of us to be connected. We live all over the country, Los Angeles, New Jersey, who knows? We're all over the country, but we're still in each other's lives. We're connected. And that's a really important part of our family anyway. Anyway, I want to move on to bizcochos.
Okay, I just want to share one. I had to share the joke that what you called those bollos espinaca. You called them your little heart attack pills.
Yes,
I thought that was amazing. Something to know: Sephardic cooking is not like skimpy on the calories. Okay, it's full on, tasty as ever, deep fried. You know, you go all in. Okay, no diets over here.
In one of those than in my car right now. So
there's in the bollos, there's both Crisco and there's Crisco rolled into it, and then the dough sits in oil overnight. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna just move into my kitchen now and get myself ready, and you could start telling us about the bizcochos that we're gonna be making.
Okay.
If you're going to be making them with us, you could follow along. It shouldn't take more than maybe 20 minutes to get the dough ready. And Renee she's going to take us through this and show us from beginning to end. So if you want to prepare your few ingredients, I'll just tell you quickly what they are. I have over here my flour, sugar, vegetable oil, baking powder, vanilla, orange juice, and sesame seeds. I think that's it, Renee. Oh, and eggs. The eggs are propping my computer up, but I got the eggs. Okay, I'm just going to mute myself and I'll see you in the kitchen.
Okay, and I'm walking over to my kitchen now too. Biscochos are, they're just a perfect little cookie because you can eat them. They're not real sweet. And they're para, so you can eat them anytime. And my grandmother's generation used to go to Dunaway Park, which was right down the street from them, with their coffee and their biscochos, and sit around the park with all the ladies, or they would go to each other's homes and sit around with their coffee and biscochos and visit with each other. It was part of everyday life for that. So we're going to start making these, and I'm going to go put my apron on because I'm a messy cook. I'm going to make the dough, and then we'll roll out a few. And I already made one batch so that you kind of can see what it looks like, so you don't have to sit there and wait through everything.
And Renee, could we do this by hand, or is it better to have a mixer?
It's much better to have a mixer. I hope you have. I use a kitchen the beater with this kind of a beater.
That's the one you brought in from Rhodes.
The one I brought in from what?
From Rhodes?
Yeah, right. The KitchenAid?
Yeah.
Ron, while Renee is getting ready, now you could maybe share one of your stories. I know you got lost.
Yeah, I probably can't tell them right now. My Auntie Sylvia is shaking her head. I want everybody to continue to like me, but I teased the hell out of Renee growing up. Didn't I, Renee?
Still do.
No. Hi, Uncle Jake.
Okay, so we're going to start with the recipe was on the website. We're going to start with 3 eggs. And
want me to crack them?
Already done. 1/4 cup of concentrated orange juice. So it's just frozen orange juice that I've defrosted. You don't dilute it at all. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then we're gonna beat this, but you don't beat it too much at this point. You just beat it lightly. Okay, then we add to that a cup of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and 1/2 cup of oil. And I use canola oil. You definitely do not want to use olive oil because it has too much of a flavor. So canola oil is a healthier oil, but it has really not very little flavor, if any. And you just mix that together. Okay, now one trick on this recipe, the amount of flour that you need, the recipe you'll see says 4+ cups. And the amount of flour is dependent upon the size of the eggs that you use and how accurate you were with measuring the liquids that you just put in. I used jumbo eggs, and so I had to, my first batch that I made earlier today, I had to actually put 5 cups of flour in. or else it was too sticky and I wasn't going to be able to roll the dough. So I have flour set out, and I'm going to slowly add the flour to this batter. And the flour has been mixed with 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Eve, are you making this along with us?
I am. I'm making it along with you. Just making a lot of noise in my kitchen, so I'm on mute. But you're doing great.
You know, you should have Tequila helping you because she helped me make these for something. I can't remember what. Well, you were out of town.
She actually helped you make biscachos. When I told her we're doing this, she's like, oh, I've done this before. I know how to make it. Renee already taught me. So she's actually, I don't know, let me check if she's on the Zoom. But Ariella, are you there? Is Tehila helping you make them? Are you making them with us?
Yes, I'm so excited.
Yay! Okay, good. So I sent Tehila to go help Ariella make her biscachos.
Okay, so I've I've put the flour in, and it's still too wet. So you don't want it to be a dry dough, but you don't want it to be so sticky that you can't roll it. So I'm going to add a little more flour to this and see if I can't get it to the right consistency.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would it be possible to put the recipe in the chat?
I'm sorry, what, Ariella?
Would it be possible to put the recipe in the chat?
I'll put it in the chat right now.
Thank you.
Hey Tehila. Tehila, Renee wants to see you.
Hi, Tehila. I told your mother you were already an expert on making these.
Renee, I loved your stories. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Very special.
Juice, but only use utensils in here.
Are you doing it dairy or?
You know, Renee, when I tried learning how to cook from my mother-in-law, who's a fabulous, fabulous cook, I found it hard. She's such a good cook that she hardly used recipes. Like, she didn't go by the recipes. She said, like, a pinch of this and a handful of salt, and that's kind of how she cooks. And after I was so young, and I didn't know the first thing about cooking, so I felt like quite overwhelmed with, like, I don't know how much. Like, what's half a cup? What's half a palm of salt? And so I kind of was a little intimidated by this. I'm just curious, Renee, do you cook to the recipe always, or do you kind of feel it out?
You know, I could take my computer over to my bookcase, all of my started cookbooks. I think I might have 10 or 12 of them. And I have a couple of favorites that I use. There's one from the Seattle congregation, from a woman from South Africa, I think. But I follow the recipes, kind of. You know, for the big things like how much flour to how much liquid, I kind of follow that, but I often make changes to it also. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like it comes with confidence and it comes with time, right? The more that you do it, the more you really know, just what it needs, right?
Exactly. Okay, so now this dough, you're going to find that it's still pretty sticky.
Yeah.
And what I do is I put out on my cutting board, roll these out so that the dough.
Wait, Eve, will you mute yourself again so we can hear Renee?
Okay.
Renee, will you just repeat what you said because we weren't able to hear you? Thanks.
Could everyone be muted again?
Yeah.
I'm hearing other noises.
Yeah, it'd be nice if everyone was muted again.
I'm going to mute all, and Renee, you're going to have to
Eve,
unmute yourself.
Eve, I did
okay.
it.
Thank you.
Don't mute me right now. My hand is too full of dough to hit my computer. So the dough is going to be sticky still, and that's okay. You don't want it to be so sticky that you can't do anything with it. But I put a little bit of flour on the cutting board that I'm going to use for rolling it out, and that kind of holds the dough so that I can roll it, because you want to roll it like a pencil to form the cookies. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this off of my mixer and take it over here to where I'm going to roll, and then I'm going to quick rinse my hands so I can move my computer, and that way you can see the next step that I'm going to be working. So just give me a second to wash my hand here.
Now we need some Sephardic music. Come on, who wants to play some?
Mark, go ahead and sing. Mark has a beautiful voice and he knows a lot of Sephardic songs.
Come on, Mark, we're all waiting.
You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, there I am. La vida do por el aquí, no puedo yo dejarlo, de beber nunca me hartí de tanto amarlo. De beber nunca me hartí de tanto amarlo. Come on, Jake, let's sing it. Where's the Raki? Get the Raki, Jake. Renee said that boyus are particularly for Hanukkah, and what else did she say? Hanukkah and something else. Well, Uncle Jake and I will attest to the fact that they are for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
As will I.
And the Turquinos call them bulemas.
Well,
so how many do you guys make? Ron, when you guys get together to make this twice a year, how many? I know that you all go home with your gallon Ziploc bags full for your freezer, but how many do you make?
Made with 8 batches at one time, but usually it's 2 to 3 batches, which will be about 20 boys.
So just to put it in perspective, each batch uses 1 2.5 pound bag of fresh spinach from Costco.
And 72 gallons of oil.
Oh my God.
Okay. I don't think the recipe had this on it, but there's 2 things that you can top these cookies with. One is sesame seeds, and the other option is a walnut, sugar, and cinnamon mix. And I just took a cup of walnuts and a quarter of a cup of sugar and a bunch of cinnamon and ran it through my food processor to make it fluffy. So if you like your cookies a little sweeter, this is the topping to use. If you like ones that are not quite so sweet, the sesame seeds are a good topping to use. And I'll show you how to do both of them. So the first step is you take some dough. You don't want to take a lot, maybe this much. And you're going to roll it. You're going to put it on the board and you're going to roll it. And you're going to roll it until it's just a little bit thicker than a pencil. And you start from the center and roll out, and you get a nice long snake-looking thing here. Hopefully you can all see that. You take a sharp knife, and at not a 90-degree angle, but at a slant, you're gonna make a cut about halfway through the snake. So you cut all the way to the bottom, halfway through. So you've got like half of a piece that's hanging on and half of a piece that's loose. And maybe every 3/8 of an inch, you make a cut. The reason you cut these, and when you form them into the cookie, it makes for a bunch of different edges. And this cookie is all about crispiness. So these cuts help to crisp up the cookie in the final version. Okay, so I've cut across the whole thing. Now I want to take my knife and cut like about this long. I would say, that's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4.5, 5 inches, somewhere in that direction. So, you just cut it and then you form a circle, pinch the circle together, and set it aside. Form a circle, pinch the circle together, and set it aside. So what you end up with,
Renee, is there anything significant about the shape? I mean, it almost looks like a sun.
Well, that's a really good observation, but no, I've never heard anything significant about it. And
okay.
Do you know anything significant about it? No? Okay. So.
Because Renee, the bread, it was called rosca. You taught me how to make a sweet Sephardic bread, and that has a similar shape, right? It's with splits.
It does. Exactly the same process, only on a much larger scale.
Right.
So, and it's for the same reason. So the cut edges can kind of get crispy on the bread also. So you have a nice crust on that bread. So I'm not gonna have you guys sit here while I roll all of these out, but what I will show you, after you've got a bunch of them rolled out, you pick it up in your hand, and you take some egg wash, and you put egg on the top. And I put a little bit of egg on the bottom because for the sesame seed version, you want the seeds to be on the top and the bottom. And then I put it top side down in my bowl, my plate of sesame seeds. If you're going to use the walnuts, then you only want to egg the top, and you only put the walnuts on the top. But for sesame seeds, you can put them on the top and the bottom. So once you have the egg on the cookies, you turn them over in the sesame seeds so you get it on both sides.
Smile.
And you want a lot of sesame seeds on these. And then you just put them on the tray. And you bake them for about 15 minutes. And I put I did 8 minutes on the lower shelf in the oven, and then I raised it to the top shelf for the last 7 minutes of cooking. And then you take them out of the oven, and I put them on a rack for them to cool. Now, these are called bizcochos de huevo, biscuits of egg biscuits. But the biscuit part comes in by what you do after you've baked them. So I'm showing you here. Let's see if I can. This is my already baked version of these cookies. The ones on this side are the sesame seeds. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
So there's the sesame seeds, and these are the ones with the walnuts on top. So after they've cooled completely, you want them to be very, very crisp. So you take a pan with sides like this, like what you bake them in. You bake them in a jelly roll pan, but you take, or a regular cookie sheet. But for this step, you take this pan with the edges on it, and you put the cookies so that they're sitting up, not laying flat. And you fill this pan with the cookies that you've made that are completely cool. And the reason you want to have them be completely cool is if you don't, they just continue to bake, and then they're going to get really overcooked. So this next step is called biscucharing, and you just put them in an oven of I can't remember if the recipe called for 250 or 200 degree oven, and you let them sit in there for an hour or so, and take one out and break it open. If it's nice and crispy, then it's done. And if it still feels a little bit soft in the center of the cookie, put them back for however long. You can't really biscuchar them too long.
Renee,
you're not going to hurt them.
This reminds me a lot of the Ashkenazic version, which is probably manzelbread or manzelbräu, which is a biscuit that you bake, and then there's a second baking afterwards to make sure it's like really dry and it's so good with tea, right? So this is probably the similar in that way.
Yes, very much so.
So we want them to be dry but not overbaked.
Right. So you can see, hopefully you can see how I've put them in here. They're not laying flat. They're on their side, and you can get a bunch of them in each pan, and then you just put them in the oven, and we're done. That's making bizcochos.
Nice. And are bizcochos, are they for any holiday in particular, or it's just
no,
all the time?
Just anytime you want to have a cup of coffee with a cookie, you have a cup of coffee with a bizcocho.
Nice.
For lunch after Rosh Hashanah services, we usually have a dairy meal, and bizcochos are often bizcochos and melon are often the dessert for that lunch.
Wow.
Or on Shabbat, after lunch on Shabbat. Since it's parv, you can eat them with anything, so it makes it easy.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. I want to show you my, tell me how I did for the first time.
beautiful, Eve. Oh my gosh, they're gorgeous.
Okay, I mean, I have to egg them and sesame seed them, but you have taught me a new skill, so I'm excited. Thank you, Renee.
You're very welcome. I hope
I'm thinking, I mean, I see some of the comments here. Ron mentioned his family cookbook, and I see some people saying, I want to get a hold of that. Well, maybe, I mean, I'll have to speak to Pam and see if Ron's comfortable, but maybe we could turn it into somewhat of a Avarachim fundraiser and produce the cookbooks or share some of these recipes in a way that could really keep this going.
Yeah, I sent it to you and I sent it to Mark.
Oh, wow. Thank you. So we'll have to talk about that. But another way of keeping this going is really the cooking classes that we've been offering. Renee is our expert chef and teacher, and we had a sold out crowd for our first series that we ran this year. But I know that in the past, you've had cooking classes many years, right, Renee?
Well, it's been many years since we did it. But yes, we had planned a series of them, but then COVID hit and we were unable to do the next series.
Well, please God, it should be behind us soon and we should be back in the kitchen together.
Absolutely. Amen.
So I think I'm just going to end by first of all saying thank you to you, Renee, for putting in so much work and effort into getting your kitchen camera ready for us to come in and share this with the world. So you should just have so much blessing in your home. And we should all, you know, so many of the board members are on this call, and Ron, your co-president and partner in crime, Ron Sidis over here. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for really making sure that we're still going strong, because it's not a small thing. And it's such a blessing, such a privilege, such an honor to be a part of this wonderful congregation. And my hope and my prayer is that we not only, you know, keep our doors open, but we really bring in young vibrancy into our synagogue for the next many, many generations to come. So thank you for sharing and enabling everything to happen.
Amen. You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
And I just want to end with a quote that I wrote down in my notebook last year, Renee, when we were in Seattle together. It was, I was doodling in one of the sessions, and I wrote, "We look to the past to build the future." And I think this is what it's all about, right? Keeping our traditions and our heritage alive. We look to the past, we lean on our grandparents and our parents and the memories and all of that, but really it's all in order to move it forward. And that is our hope and our prayer that we're going to leave you guys all with. And thank you for joining us tonight. And I look forward to seeing everyone again soon. We have so many great programs online. So I feel like I see you guys so many times a week. Thank you so much.